equations by doing mental math. So yesterday all we did was replace the variable with the number they provided. Today we're going to actually start solving addition equations. Okay? So it's kind of like yesterday where we're looking for the solution for the variable. So in the real world link here, okay, on the second hole of miniature golf, it took Ann 3 putts to sink the golf ball. Her score is now 5. She represents this situation with cups and counters. So, what is this cup representing here? What does the cup represent? What do you mean how much she had? What?
Like the 3 putts that went in the golf ball hole.
Not quite. So if you look at this, so it says on the second hole, okay, it took her 3 putts to sink. So this is the second hole. What does the cup here represent?
The hole.
No.
What?
Okay, what do you think the 3 markers count for?
How much it took? How much putts it took?
So that would be her score on the second hole. Score on second hole, 3. She scored 3 on the second hole. Now, if she has a score of 5 altogether, and this is the second hole, what do you think the cup represents? Not a number. What does it represent? No.
The hole.
Okay, so which one?
The first.
The first one. This would represent. This would represent. So her score on the first hole, because we don't know what it is. That's what the cup's representing. The 3 markers here represent her 3 putts on the second hole. Now what does the 5 represent?
Altogether.
Her score now, altogether. Score now of 5. Okay, now they want us to write an addition equation to show this. So if we don't know her score on the first hole, how do we represent that in an equation?
Variable.
A variable. So what variable do you want to use? C works. Okay, so we're going to go C plus how many did she get on the second hole? 3 equals, because that's where our equal sign goes, how many? 5. C plus 3 equals 5. Now, how would you solve this equation? How would we solve it to figure out what C is? What do you have to do? Ruby?
Subtraction.
Yeah. Subtract 3 from each side. So we're going to subtract 3. So what's her score on the first hole? 2. So once you have that, go ahead and go on to the next page. All right, so what we're doing today, like I was saying, we're solving equations, okay, but they're all addition. So every equation you see today is going to have addition with it. So to solve that is what you use as inverse operations. Inverse operations undo what's there. So if we have addition in the equation, what's the opposite of addition? Subtraction. So whenever you have an addition equation, you always do the opposite, so you subtract. What do I mean by that? If we have the equation 8 equals x plus 3. All right, so this is our equation here. To solve for x, we have to get rid of this 3. What is the opposite of addition? Subtraction. So I subtract 3. What's 3 minus 3? 0. That cancels out. Now, whatever you do to the one side of the equation, you got to do the other side. So we subtract over here. What's 8 minus 3? 5 equals x. You guys just did algebra. That is an algebraic expression or equation. You solve for the variable. Then you can double check it. What's 5 plus 3? 8. That works. It makes it a true statement. Now, they do show you the method with using the symbols. You can go ahead and use that. I don't use that method. I always use just solving it out. Okay, so the reason we do this is this right here, the subtraction property of equality. And that states, if you subtract the same number from each side of an equation, it still remains true. So like if we have 5 equals 5, and I subtract 3 from each of those, so 5 minus 3, 5 minus 3, you still get 2 equals 2. That's why it's still true. You have to do it to both sides of the equal sign. So like this one, x plus 2 equals 3. So I subtract 2 here. What's 2 minus 2?
0.
So that cancels. That's why I just like to cross them out because they're gone. All you're left with is x. Then you got to do it to the other side. What's 3 minus 2? 1. So x equals 1. So that's the subtraction property of equality because you're subtracting from each side. All right, so let's look down here at letter A. So letter A. So we have C plus 2 equals 5. Okay, so every time you have an equation, you are wanting to solve for the variable. So we're trying to get C by itself. So we got to get rid of this 2. Okay, what's the opposite of addition? Subtraction. So I subtract. What's 2 minus 2?
0.
Gone. Now I have to do it to the other side as well. So 5 minus 2.
3.
C equals 3. That's it. There's your answer. That's how you solve an equation. Every time.
What if I already know in my head?
You always do the opposite. You're not always going to be able to. So like letter C here. 3.5 plus y equals 12.75. Doesn't matter. Still just solving for y. So how do I get rid of that 3.5? What do we have to do? Subtract. If it's addition there, you always do the opposite.
It's 9.7.
So when we subtract this, what do you know about decimals? What do you do with decimal points when you have addition and subtraction?
Make it a whole number.
Nope.
It gotta drop it down.
Well, you gotta do what with them first though, so we can subtract
Make
them.
it a fraction.
What do you do with the decimal point?
Oh, make it
With addition, okay, those are fractions. We're talking about decimals. Guys, what do I have to do with the decimal point if I'm adding and subtracting? You line them up.
That's what I said. Drop it down.
That's not the same as lining them up. So this cancels. You're left with y, and now we just subtract. What's 5 minus 0? 7 minus 5? 2. Now you drop the decimal down. Okay, 12 minus 3 is what?
8, 9. No, you have to bottom it.
9 and 25 hundredths. So it doesn't change anything with the decimal. You're just adding and subtracting. So you always do the opposite of what's there. You always do the opposite of what's there. So letter B, go ahead and try that one. 6 equals x plus 5.
I already did.
So go ahead and solve that one. You're solving for x. You have to show your work. All right, so if we have x plus 5, how do we get rid of the 5? What do we have to do? Subtract. So we're going to subtract the 5 from both sides. Because if you do it to one, you got to do it to the other. Just like fractions. So you got to cancel that out. What's 6 minus 5? X equals 1. That's it. That's all you have to do is you're solving for the variable. You're finding the solution, just like what we did yesterday, but those were a little bit easier because we could do those in our head. Now we're going to get it to ones where they're not so easy. Then you're also going to have to write an equation, just like we wrote those expressions. So, number 2 here. Ruben and Tariq have 245.5 downloaded minutes of music. If Ruben has 132, how many belong to Tariq? Write and solve an addition equation to find out how many minutes belong to Tariq. So what do we not know? What's the unknown?
How many minutes?
Okay, so I'm going to say M equals Tariq's minutes. Because we don't know how many he owns. So, now we have to write this. So how many did Reuben have?
132.
132. So, we do 132 plus how many? How many does Tariq own? M, because we don't know. How much do they have all together? Guys, you realize you have a book in front of you, right? So 245.5. So that's how you write it. Or you could flip-flop and put M plus 132. It means the same thing. So now how do we solve for M? What do we have to do? Moriana, what are we subtracting?
We're subtracting 147.5 minutes and 2 minutes.
There, whoa, what?
We're subtracting the minutes Reuben had and
So how many is that? How much is that? What do we subtract here to solve this equation? Ruby? 132 from each side. So that cancels, because that's just 0, so we're left with M. Now we have to do the same thing over here. So I just added decimal to 0. What's 5 minus 0?
5.
Bring your decimal down. 5 minus 2.
3.
So he owns 13.5 minutes. So all you gotta do is solve for the variable. Okay? So you always do the opposite. Guys, if you ever see an addition equation, you always do the opposite. So it'll always be subtraction. So let's jump over to page 529. Okay, with a partner. Okay, you're going to do number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, and that's it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So go ahead and work with a partner, or you can work by yourself. Totally up to you. I'll give you so number 1, we have C plus 3 equals 6. What do we have to do here, Aiden? Okay, from where? Both sides. Okay, so that cancels. You're left with C equals what? 3. C equals 3. Okay, number 2. 9 equals 2 plus X. What do we have to do here, Moriana?
You subtract the 2 minus 9.
Okay,
I mean 9 minus
there you go.
6 would be 7, so you write X equals 7.
All right, number 3. 7 plus A equals 9. What do we have to do here? Ruby?
You do 7 minus 7, which gets out, and then 9 minus 7, which is 2.
Good. So that cancels. You're left with A equals 2.
I know how to do
All right, now number 4. Okay, they have Paz and Zacharias, or whatever his name is.
Cardia.
That's fine too. Together have $756.80. If he has $489.50, how much does Paz have? What is this equation going to look like, Addie?
It's gonna be 489.50. Plus we did C.
Okay, what's C represent?
It represents the how much Paz has. And then
Paz's money.
And then equals 756.80.
Okay. Now how do you solve this?
We do 756.80 minus 489.
And what did you get?
267.30.
$267.30 equals Paz's money. Any questions on these? So this is how you solve addition equations. You always do inverse operations. To do that, you always just do the opposite of what's there. Always. To solve these. No matter what, you always do the opposite. It's like you're undoing them. Okay? It's like when you tie a shoe, you always have to untie it to undo it, right? Untie the knot. That's what you're doing with these. Okay, so what you're going to do now is you guys are going to get a piece of paper. Okay?